ॐ नमो वरिहन्ताणम् ॐ नमो सिद्धाणम् ॐ नमो आयर्याणम् ॐ नमो वच्छायाणम् नमो लोये सवसाहूणम् ईशो पञ्चनमुक्कारो सप्तपावप्रणासनो मङ्गलाणं च सव्वेसिं अर्हमं हवै मङ्गलम् अर्हमं हवै मङ्गलम्.
So, welcome everyone to Jito Professional Forum. What a great day to start a crossfire. Today is Guru Purnima and we have the gurus. We have Suresh Muthaji, we have Rajesh Jainji, we have Hiteshji, we have Ranjanji, we have Hemantji, we have Aditya Jainji. Welcome everyone. So before we start the session, it is very important to appreciate our sponsors. So I take this opportunity and play the video of Wari Group.
Wow, what a massive organization Wari is. It's a real honor to have Wari to be associated with Jito Professional Forum, and the person who made Wari right from scratch to what it is now, Hiteshji Doshi, happens to be our panelist today. So it's a privilege. Thank you, Hiteshji. Yes.
Thank you, Hiteshji. May I request Milind Shah, Director in Charge, to please proceed. Milind bhai, you are on mute.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Vari. Vari has been our title sponsors, and you have seen how they are making the world a better place to live. Yes, this entire format was adapted from CNN's Crossfire, and that program was launched in 1982, and it did wonderful for at least 25 years, and it was so engaging. And we thought to adapt something on the similar lines, and the idea was proposed by Ajay Bhai, and here we are today. I would like to welcome our panelists, Rajesh Bhai, Ranjan Bhai, and Aditya. You are most welcome here, sir, and we are privileged to have you today here. Uh, Apart from that, we have Surajji Butha, our president, Hitesh Bhai Doshi, our secretary general, and we have Himanshu Bhai Shah, who is a Shraman Arogyam chairman. He is also with us. I would like to welcome Mahavirji Chaudhary, Parasji Bhandari, and entire working committee also. We have our zone chairman, Prithviraj Ji, Ramesh Bhai, Kanti Bhai, Kamlesh Bhai, Kushal Bhai, and Sarvesh Bhai. You are all of you are welcome, most welcome. And we look forward to exciting session. It will be really engaging. So I hand over to Vishal Jain, who will be introducing our great panelists today. Thank you.
We also have Sachinji Jain joining in from, I think, Pepsi headquarter from the US. Welcome, Sachinji. Sorry. Yeah. Please go ahead. Yes.
So, Jai Jinend to everyone, and it's been my honor and privilege to introduce you to the panel, a very distinguished panel, I must say. Starting with Shri Suresh Motha, certainly shouldering the burden of the entire Jito organization, as you were just talking about. He is the president of Jito, and he is a star exporter and real estate tycoon, and he is the force behind restructuring, diversification, and expansion of the Mohan Butha Group, a multi-million conglomerate invested in international trading, export and imports, and infrastructure development, a recipient of several awards, a great speaker, and a very, very big inspiration. I have listened to him a few times. Thank you, sir, for being here. Certainly, the second one is Shri Hitesh Doshi, the one with the sun, creating a brighter future. We just heard about Wari Group. I was just reading a recent publication on your story. They talked about the group recorded a turnover of 2,000 crore last year, and I think very soon is going to triple its revenue by increasing the capacity, production capacity. One very interesting thing about Hiteshji I just read through is that he received a doctorate of professional entrepreneurship from European Continental University of State of Delaware, USA. So certainly it would be great to hear his thoughts. Certainly he is a staunch philanthropist and really actively engaged in socially, including Jito. Hemantji, I just heard him briefly in the morning at Gurgaon. He is a leader in chemical, polymers, and real estate sector. He is a managing director of KLJ Group of Companies, a multi-product and multi-locational business conglomerate. The KLJ Group is on its way to become the largest producer of, I think, chlorinated solvents in the world. And Sri Hemant Jain ji has also diversified in many different business activities, including real estate for commercial spaces, IT parks, malls, and residential housing projects. He is chairman at JTF and certainly very involved socially. And it's also my pleasure to introduce you to some of our mentors in Jito mentorship program. Rajesh Jain, he is CEO of Lacoste India, and he has been an entrepreneur himself who turned into a corporate executive. He's the MD and CEO of Lacoste in India and has been constantly nurturing the brand since October 2009 and has built and propagated Lacoste in India as a complete lifestyle brand. And he has strong belief in his own code, which says that top line, bottom line, and growth and customer delight and people, everything that matters and everything else is merely incidental. And he is an evangelist, an industry leader in, sorry, so that was about Rajesh. And It's my privilege to now introduce you Ranjan Jain. Ranjan Jain is joining us from LA in the USA. And he is an evangelist and industry leader in cybersecurity space, something which is very, very hot, very interesting. And he's the executive director at the Walt Disney Company, and with over 20 years of experience in the space of cybersecurity, and he's a well-known speaker in this space. And prior to Disney, he was with companies like TCS and Cisco and Pricewaterhouse. One interesting thing about him is that he is quite a lot in adventure sports, skydiving, parasailing, bungee jumping is, I think, next on his bucket list. And so, and now the final panelist we have is Aditya Jain, a great friend from Gurgaon, who is right now in San Francisco. He's a supply chain strategist, and he has sourced over $8 billion in corporate spend over his 20 years of experience. And he has worked in supply chain strategy consulting across organizations like Procter & Gamble, Accenture, Boston Consulting, and currently in Visa. It's great to have such a diverse, power-packed panel with us, and look forward to hear from them. Thank you.
Prashantji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vishalji. Mansiji will put up the slide. Excited. Thank you, Vishalji, for the introduction. The context of, I wanted to briefly spend a few minutes on the context of today's discussion. When you look, Dur ka dhol suhana, or the grass on the other side is green. If I give my example, I have been in the corporate for almost 25 years now. And my parentage, of course, is from business background. And I remember when I joined corporate, in the first 2 years, I was like, oh my goodness, ye kahan fas gaya main. You know, in my business, I could do anything I want. But in corporate, it's about rules, it's about processes, it's about the bosses and the corporate politics. So over the years, but my success has been because I somehow kept that entrepreneurship spirit inside me, but constantly fighting with the processes, systems, bureaucracy. And so that is that interesting background that I grew up in, and that is my motivation for the discussion today. What you see on the slide on the left is a journey, and this journey is constant. Either it be an entrepreneur or a multinational, for example, a large conglomerate like GE or any big organization. They have started with an individual's idea, a vision, and they chase that vision with some bootstrap fund that we call today in a garage. And then eventually they've come to a size and scale. Now, this journey is common. It has been either with the entrepreneur or with the corporate. What eventually over a period of time is the dilemma on the right. And that is what is the context of today, where the decision that we all grapple with, either in corporate or in entrepreneurship, okay, can I take this risk? Can I follow my gut? Do I bank on relationships? Do I scale up, or do I follow processes? Or how do I manage sustainability? How do I manage a large organization, but at the same time have peace of mind? Or am I getting 24/7 pressures that I take over the weekends? I can't take my day off. So these are the challenges and the dilemma that we all deal with. And I think it's an exciting panel to raise these questions and learn from this panel what we can take and borrow. So that would be interesting to follow for the day. And I would request Ajay Bhai to start with this this panel discussion. Over to you, Ajay Bhai.
Yeah, thank you, Prashantji. Now, since it's like a crossfire, as Milind Bhai has said, it's a format where we get to hear from two sides of the aisle. Two sides, have their own views. There is nothing right or wrong, but the idea is just bring that to the fore, that there could be different ways to look at things, and then we learn from one another in a peer learning way. So the story starts, whether we take the corporate route or the entrepreneurial route, the journey starts with recruitment. And now, on one side, we have Aditya ji, who has worked with Accenture with over 200,000 employees. On the other hand, we also have the counterparts on the entrepreneurial side who have recruited thousands of people. So if I can start with Aditya ji, with you, that, how do you recruit? What are the ways, or what are the attributes you look at, or what are the basic mantras you follow while recruiting?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Jai Jain. So the question around recruitment, I think over time, executives realize that recruitment is probably one of the most important decisions that you make that impact the company for the long term. Yeah, because the intake at that level, whether it's entry level or it's a senior level, and you recruit at the point where you hope that the employee has a great experience within the company and the company can extract all the value and the reasons why they hired it. So the 2 or 3 things that I look at when I'm hiring for and it changes at a different level, but broadly is one, does that person have interpersonal skills, the softer skills? Because whether you're engaging with a client or you have an internal role, you're always engaging with people at this time. So the first thing is, how do you engage with people? How does the person, how would the person engage with people? What credentials that the person has to show managing conflict, managing emotions, some of the emotional intelligence things. And the second important skill that I look for is, does that person have problem solving skills? Yeah. So whether it is you're hiring an accounting person with an accounting degree or a business degree or an engineering degree, eventually professionals or anybody for the matter is doing some sort of a problem solving, yeah, in their own space. So the ability to figure it out. I mean, so many people come in and saying, I don't have this data, I don't have this resource, I don't do that. You have to overcome all these obstacles, all these things. Maybe there's a time crunch as well. So interpersonal skills and problem solving skills are the ones that I'm looking for, at least.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Aditya ji. Now, Hitesh bhai, on the other hand, has started, Wari and they have over 2,500 people now. So Hitesh bhai, to take the cue further, now, as Aditya ji has said, problem solving skills, would you term that as entrepreneurial skill, and are these the qualities you would look for, or how would you view recruitment as such, and what kind of attributes and skills you would be looking for?
Thank you, and Jai Jinendra to all. I think it has changed time to time. When we started the company, we were just looking to the person, and the gut feeling was there in place. And when you grow and you have the HR one function and then HR manager and some consultant, it keeps on changing. But still, when it comes at the last decision, it comes more on a gut feeling. Of course, you have some inputs from your team, but end of the day, you see what is the attitude, what is the body language, and what you can capture from the face readings. So I think
Sure.
that's the difference.
Yeah. So again, as we see the view, on one side, Aditya ji is saying, more crystallized, more structured way. Hitesh bhai is saying eventually it boils down to gut feeling. Now, when it comes to gut feeling, there is a consumer, king here, or someone who deals with the B2C consumer market, Rajesh ji. Lacoste is a huge brand where people matter and they build the brand. So do you go with your gut, or you recruit for skills and, the tested way of going through all the HR processes? So what is your mantra, sir?
See, so being in a professional organization, obviously everything goes through a certain process where HR looks at the candidate's profile and whether that matches their skills, etc. So we have 3 levels of employees. One is the workers in the manufacturing plant. Second, we have our front-end boutique employees. And the third is the corporate employees. I ensure that I take interview personally for each and every corporate employee. And they're the most important, of course, whatever Aditya said or whatever Hitesh bhai said, they all matter. But the most important thing for me there is the attitude of the person. And when I talk about the attitude means the commitment to the cause that you're talking about. Attitude means getting along well within the organization. As far as the skill and the qualification, etc. are concerned, I believe that anybody who has landed upon my table, he has already traveled through the functional heads and every other person. So they would already have those skills. They would already have that kind of a mindset to do the work. But what I personally see is the commitment of the person, the attitude, whether this is right or no, whether the person is ethical. So if somebody, let's say, is willing to quit his organization immediately the moment he gets another job, I perhaps would not like to hire that kind of a person. I would say that the person has to be ethical enough that even if we are taking him, he should hand over properly in his previous organization. And all these things are a part of a bigger thing, which I personally put them under the umbrella of attitude. That's my main criteria.
Sure. Thank you, Rajeshji. Now, Hemanji, you have 3,000 employees and you have built various businesses on your own. So on one hand, let's say if we recruit talent, and there we saw two sides. Hitesh bhai saying ultimately it boils down to gut feeling. Others are saying attitude and people skills. But to be able to to onboard a talent itself is not enough. Now, on one hand, large corporates have bigger budgets and corporates can pay relatively higher salaries and compensations coupled with ESOPs. On the other hand, though, entrepreneurial ventures have certain restrictions in terms of the budget. So, Hemant bhai, how do you retain and manage and keep these 3,000 people motivated? What's your mantra for that?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Hemant Jain. I think there is no fixed mantra we have as entrepreneurs, but I think HR as a HR in a company is the single most important department. I think that defines the value system which we run with. So if we are able to bring the right people with the right values into the company, then we are able to maintain our value system. Which is ultimately the company boils down to people who are working in it. But I believe like we are running a real estate division in which we're building some office spaces and some shopping malls. We are having 9 manufacturing plants across India and Qatar. But what I feel is that the same kind of mindset doesn't happen for all different kinds of jobs. A same person for real estate might not be good enough for the business of chemicals, or for so I think the mindset changes with the businesses, and we need different skill set people to handle different kinds of businesses. But for us, a single value system is very, very important. And I am with Hitesh bhai. I think all entrepreneurial businesses ultimately boil down to that feeling. Like we said, once there is a process being driven in our office, but once we are taking senior level people, there is a system of screening. But ultimately, it boils down to gut feeling and whether the person will be able to carry on the value system which the company has created now. So that's in short what I would say.
Yep, sure. Thank you. Ranjanji, now you represent a large organization like Walt Disney. Now, a question, let's say entrepreneur, as you know, they have a lot of skills, they come in with problem solving abilities. Would your organization or would corporates explore ways to recruit entrepreneurs in the corporate roles?
Jai Janendra, everyone. It's a fantastic question, and that's a challenge and dilemma we go through almost every day. Where how do we get the best from the industry for a creative company like Disney? And I actually agree with everyone, so I'm not on one side or other. It's just a combination of all of it. The way we go through the recruiting is, I mean, beyond the technical ability from an individual standpoint, the biggest thing we look for in the individual is the cultural fit. Disney is a huge relationship-oriented company. There is no thought process around top mandates and following the rules. It's more about how do we work in a relationship-oriented organization. So, does the person have those abilities to manage the work? There are a lot of unknowns at times. Where does the person have the ability to find ways within the organization to get the work done? There are times where we can teach the people, we can train them, but we can't teach certain things like I think Hemanji was saying, ethics. We can't teach them how to have relationship, right? Those are I would say the softer skills, but the most important ones that we look into, because if a certain person is not really technically very strong, but they have really good interpersonal skills, there are times where we'll be looking into those things. And eventually at the end of the day, again, when the interview process is happening, it's a 30-minute, 1 hour long conversation for a person who is going to be a part of the company for many years to come. So it comes down to a gut feeling that how strongly you're feeling towards that candidate, given all the conversation that person has gone through. So that's where I would say, it's a combination of certain framework that HR puts together, certain guidelines, and at the end, it's like how strongly you're feeling that this person is going to fit into the culture of the company.
Thank you, Ranjanji. Now, Sureshji, the next step. So we recruited the right people, then we ensured that they remain there. But how do we ensure that they remain motivated? Now, Sureshji, you not only run 15,000 plus Jito organization as the global head, as the global president, but you also have transitioned your $70 million venture, and you are into various countries. You are also the star exporter. So you have seen, various quarters of this of this prism. So what is your take on this? How do you keep them motivated?
Right. So I think I have to admit that I have not really excelled in this department of recruitment yet. But to whatever little experience that I've got of handling recruitments in different positions in our office, we are into about 5 major verticals. So over the period of time now, we've sort of I've personally making sure that I don't really get involved into recruitments when it comes to those operations level recruitments. I get involved where there are strategies and business development. These are the 2 areas that I really get into where it's purely a gut feeling. There's nothing called as a right or a wrong. Different things have worked for different people. But for me, it's purely a gut feeling. And whenever we recruit positions in these 2 departments, I think we are recruiting partners to us. So you should actually be able to see a part of you in that person. The reason why you want to recruit people at business development or strategies is because you are on a growth path and you're not single-handedly able to take this forward. And if you're not able to bring somebody who's not in sync with your thought process, who can add to the speed, then I think somewhere you would lag behind. So if you're able to see yourself, a part of yourself in that person, I think that is where I take decisions. And I think you said, in Jito, for example, for the very first time, we conducted interviews even for the project heads, the zonal heads, the project heads. And I'll tell you, just by that mere formality of conducting this interviews and really getting to know, okay, are you in the same zone of thought process? That is what makes a team. For different people, it can be a different team, but when it comes to you, your thought process is reflected in your team. Alignment is the key. So I think that is what sort of translates into success.
Thank you, Surajji. Prashantji, over to you. But your framework has worked, Prashantji, as you are saying. We have seen 3 people on one side use the word gut feel, and some others the framework or the process. So over to you, Prashantji.
Yeah, Hemant Bhai has his hand raised, but I'm already excited to share this. Today, the HR in the global large conglomerates is moving towards, in the context of inclusion and diversity, to say, hey, look, gut is an unconscious bias. And to eliminate gut, they create a 3-panel interview. And they say, you should not follow your gut, but you should really be objective about your interviews. So it's quite exciting to see the balance between gut in the attitude, culture match, and ego match. It was very exciting. Hemant Bhai, over to you. And then quickly, I have a burning question in my stomach. I want to get it out. But quickly, over to you, Hemant Bhai.
We are working with different geographies. I think things changes from geographies also. Like in Thailand, if I shout at a person, he'll resign the same day. I can do that in India, but in Qatar, I have to handle people in a different way. So I think it changes with a lot of geographies, the way you're handling. So it's something which is on my mind. Because the day I landed in Thailand with my CEO, I was sitting, and I was saying, you do whatever, but don't shout at the person. If you shout at the person will not work with you. So I think it changes with the geography of the country also.
So cultural take. And Prashantji will come out with the next question. But in terms of professional introduction of Prashantji, he's the MD of GE Power, and he has 7,000 crores book as the working order. He has those orders already, which he has to fulfill. So he has a lot of responsibilities he shares. So he can now get us some more insights. Over to you, Prashantji.
Yeah, so I would like to pick on the gut feeling. And when it comes to gut now, there is this processes over entrepreneurship. And this is the big dilemma. Gut feeling, the entrepreneur can take when he's on the scene. But I'm very curious to know, how does it work when you have now a scale of 3,000 employees? How do you manage the gut versus process? So this is my question, and I would like to throw it open. Maybe I'll start with you, Hiteshji.
As you grow, I think, in my opinion, the processes are done. You have that function or HR or whatever there, and they do their processes. When finally it comes to you, definitely you see their recommendations, whatever they like, or You said like a panel interviews and all that. But after that, also as an entrepreneur, you get habituated when you start with a new product, new business, that risk is all gut, right? So when it comes to the decision, you don't take the decision only because your team has recommended. You put something, some value addition from your side. And in my opinion, that value addition is definitely your intellect. But apart from that, gut is also there.
So in the taking gut as the context, I want to move towards risk taking for growth. And in your journey in Vari, you have really made big shift from manufacturing instruments. You moved into renewable energy, completely different field, and you made a very good exit from that business. Now, how did you manage that? Did you follow corporates, or did you take a big four survey, or again that was something that you followed because you went to that fair in, was that in Hanover, and that you got an idea and you came back, I will start this. So please tell us about that.
So this is again on entrepreneurship. You became an opportunist, right? And there you are quite a flexible. I tell my people this very regularly. The person on a street, for him to take a decision, it takes a minute to give you even 50% discount. And as I'm growing, this is changing. Even 5% discount takes 10 days in my company sometimes, right? So opportunity, when you see that you have a larger opportunity from instrumentation and you have a 24 hours, you take that call that you are getting a good valuation here, exit from this and go to the next. So it's like an opportunity and the decision what you take. But if you put it to the group probably, and as I said, this 5% discount, whether we should exit this business which you started and or you make an expansion and additional business instead of closing one and moving to another. Probably that, in my opinion, is the big difference between the professionals and the entrepreneur.
Sure.
So over to you, Ranjan, to understand you managing cyber security risk, something that you cannot leave to gut. So tell us, how do you manage now from processes? How much flexibility do you see in process versus gut, or taking that intuitive or gut feeling?
I probably am on the extreme end right now from a company standpoint where we have just too many processes, and that slows us down. And I know like we will talk a bit probably more about that. But from a risk standpoint, I mean, one thing that we typically do is uh, at the time of initiation of the work, anything new, right, where we do that analysis upfront so that once the decision has been made, then it's all about making it happen. Now, obviously, things change. So there are checkpoints that we have, whether it's, leadership forums, committees, and other areas. And that's where I think processes comes in to make sure that the decisions that were made, whether it's financially, whether looking at the business, whether it's improving a process, we are coming up with the KPIs, the key performance indicators, to make sure that we are heading in the right direction, to align to the vision or to the strategy that was initially agreed upon, so that in case there is any deviation, we can do the course correction.
Sure. Can I have a follow-up, Prashantji? Can I ask a follow-up? So I'm really tempted to ask Adityaji. Now, on one hand, you were a part of 200,000 people strong team. Also, you have worked with Boston Consulting Group. So the basic question is now the fact that most of the entrepreneurial ventures are saying that gut feel is very critical, and that at the end of the day that prevails. So can gut be learned? If there is, let's say, some corporate executives or even other entrepreneurs, they want to know what is gut. How do you see that, and can it be learned or can it be cultivated?
Absolutely, gut can be learned and it can be heard. So there is this thing in corporate world where rely on data. Yeah, for some there is God, and then for everything else there is data, right? So that's a big mantra. And if you ask, so over my 7 years of strategy consulting, I would have consulted and advised over 50, 70 CEOs. Yeah. So I want to do this, learning this thing about gut and feeling. I don't think any one of them could have run a company with just based on guts and feeling. Right? They couldn't have scaled the company just on guts and feeling, but they couldn't have run the company based on just processes and data as well. So it is a mix. It's just basically how do you mix data and insights with experience and expertise. And eventually, when it comes to making a decision, it comes down to some mixture of all three of data, insights, expertise, and a feeling. And how do you go about it? Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Hemanji, if I can just ask as a follow-up to that, now from 0 to 3,000, with 3,000 employees, as Aditya ji has said, scaling up cannot just happen based on gut. So how do you manage that? How do you balance out gut for any business decisions that you have done? You have manufacturing facilities at Qatar, Thailand, and 3 new plants coming up at Gujarat. So given all the scale that with which you work with, how do you ensure that gut gets supplemented with processes and system? How did you transition into that large scale up?
I think operationally, I think process takes over guts, because the plant, we are process-driven plants. These are like chemical plants, and these are all process-driven and part of the business. So I think operationally, on a day-to-day basis, we are more process-driven. But whenever it comes to a larger decision of shifting to a business, a new venture, then I think gut prevails over the processes. But on a day-to-day basis, on a day-to-day functional basis, if the company has to run, it runs on a basis of processes, of systems which are set up. But at the head, sometimes when only in times of India is a unique country. We have troubles which comes without knocking. So that time your gut feeling works better. In the time of trouble, in the time of new decision, I think gut prevails over processes. But on a functional basis, if I say, I think processes in our company are the way to go forward. Sure. The way the companies can run. If you are doing multiple businesses, I think you cannot do purely on that.
Sure. And Rajeshji, since Prashantji has asked the question about how do various people perceive risk. Now, do you, as while heading the brand like Lacoste in India, being the MD and CEO, do you see that you led or you overmanage the risk and let some entrepreneurial opportunities go by? As Hitesh Bhai has said, that being an opportunist is very critical for an entrepreneurial mind. So in your role that you are in, or based on your experience, do you let go of opportunities while managing risk?
So first of all, I would like to define, as per my understanding, what is a risk. So I believe that risk is getting into unknown without any planning. So once you plan, you have to take that calculated risk to grow. Otherwise, you just can't grow. When we were talking about the gut, I think gut also is basically an experience which has inculcated it so much that it has become a part of yourself. And based on that experience, you start taking calls. Now, businesses are not either a science or an art. It's a fine balance of both the things. You have to have data, you have to have systems and processes, but at the same time, you also have to temper it with your gut, which comes from the experience that you have shared so far or that you have gained so far. Based on these things, what I feel that it's a must for any organization to take calculated risks, not only based on gut feeling, but based on data, systems, and processes, as well as your gut. And then only you can process. And because of that, I don't think we let go of any opportunity which comes true on both these scales. Sure. Of course, we don't necessarily get into those things where either the data doesn't support our feel of gut, or the gut says something else, but the data doesn't support that. For example, we have to keep on opening new showrooms throughout the country. Now, every new showroom is a risk. But what we also do is we collect the data for the catchment. We see that what are the adjacencies of our store in that mall or a particular high street. And then I also personally visit those stores to see that what my gut feel says based on my experience. Because of that, I think we've been able to manage it pretty well so far. And it has to be a combination of both, I would say.
Sure. Perfect. That's a brilliant answer, Rajeshji. Prashantji? Yes.
Yeah, so it's. I think it's interesting to see how we are dealing between gut and processes, and I'm seeing quite a mix of gut. And I heard Aditya ji who said eventually you use data, experience, and that develops the gut. So, and probably entrepreneurship is saying I use my gut and I drive my business, and I will eventually scale up to get the processes. So I think it's an interesting way to see the world from different eyes. So when I look at, so I want to follow through this question with scaling up. You know, when you scale up to a large organization, what is it that goes in your mind? How do you really think about scaling up? And maybe I want to start this time with Sureshji.
Right. So scaling up, I think eventually every company which is on a growth prospect has to and who want to grow has to have this scalability factor. And at different stages of different milestones of your growth, the scalability, the parameters, the strategies around the scalability also changes. So we, for example, when we were, from a few lakh turnover to about 100 crores, the strategies are different for scalability. But from 100 to 500, when we reached, the strategies were different. So at every milestone of your growth process, the strategies for scalability is different. So that is what my take is.
Yeah, and then as a follow-up, Ranjanji, to you, as Prashantji has said, scaling up. Now, Walt Disney has centers all across, or Disney worlds are all around the world. So from the vantage point that you are in, how does one replicate the quality, but more importantly, how does one as an individual and as the institution or as an organization replicate the experience? To replicate experience is not easy. So what's the mantra that you can share which everyone can learn from?
I think it's coming back to like defining those processes to make sure that, because quality is not something that we can just have somebody just take care of it without having a certain framework. It has to be repetitive. It has to be consistent to give that same experience, whether you are sitting in Hong Kong, whether you're in Paris, or whether you are in Florida Park. The magical experience that we talk about when a consumer enters the market, or when a person is watching a Disney Plus movie, that experience, the set of guidelines, the criteria, that needs to be defined. And obviously it's not just like a one-time deal. It needs to continuously evolve as the audience is evolving. So when Disney started, hundreds years back, the processes that were put in place, the audience at that time is not the same audience that we have today. Disney Plus didn't exist 2 years back, right? So obviously a lot of things have evolved, and Disney Plus 2 years back, it was very different than the Disney Plus we see today. So not just putting the processes around that, but continuous evolving based on how industry is evolving, how our consumers are evolving, will make sure that we are in this journey of evolution around the quality. We continue to provide that to our end consumers.
Sure.
Can I add a point, JJ? So I just joined Accenture last Wednesday. Accenture is now a 550,000 people organization. So that's the scale. And somewhere when you become that big, you have to rely on processes, and you, at the cost of losing bit of agility. And that's the challenge any large corporation has. Prior to Accenture, I was in American Express. Amex is 170-year-old organization. Very few examples of Fortune 100 companies who have sustained this many years. And when you work in so many countries for so many years, you have to rely on consistent experience. You have to rely on delegation of decision making. Because if at all there was an entrepreneur, you can decide yourself, you can rely on gut, but somewhere you need to trickle down on decision making, and then you rely on systems, processes. And that's a challenge for a large corporation to be nimble. And I think that technology is the only way. And that's what my 3 days I've been pretty impressed with Accenture, that technology enabled processes that can drive scale. And I guess that's the learning for all of us, that to drive scale, delegate downward, but rely on technology enabled processes. That's my learning.
Sure. So there is another side to that, Vishalji, if I can ask, in the interest of Crossfire being the format. So Hiteshji and Hemantji, to you, do you see that when your competitors are large corporates where the response time is going to be relatively longer, or their ability to respond and capture on the emerging opportunities or trends, have you encountered any situations where there was an import option available, but you responded faster and because you did not have too many processes and systems, you could leverage that to your advantage. Hemant bhai, Hitesh bhai, or Suresh ji, any examples if you can cite, or has it happened to you?
I think at least I know from power industry, Hemant bhai, you should be able to say. Today, I heard the big houses announcing big plans for solar in India, but somehow Wari became the biggest producer in the country. So I'm very curious to understand. You did not wait for the technology-driven processes to drive your growth, but you did it. So tell us how you managed that growth and how did you scale up?
We definitely have a technologies and we use that, but not as Vishalji is saying about the Accenture, and that's what we intend to do, or you can say aspired. So definitely without the technologies, there are a lot of issues. So first thing, the large organization where they take a little bit more time. But apart from that, the customer always wants to see the personal relationship and whether they can talk to the owner of the company, they can reach to the top. That works well also in India. So I will not say it's only the response time, but the relationship also works here well. Technology side, yes, for any growth now, if you are not with the technology together, I think it will be a big problem or big collapse in near future.
Sure. Hemant bhai, what's your take on that? Like, have you encountered a situation where you responded faster and really leveraged those opportunities?
We work with the global oil majors like Shell and Exxon and people like that. And these companies runs by processes and systems. They don't run by gut feeling and things like that. So a lot of times we have an opportunity which we have taken. The Exxon wanted to enter the country. We partnered with Shell, and we did business together for almost 10 years because the Exxon wanted to do on their own because they felt that we are Exxon and we can do it. But in India, like Hitesh bhai said, relationship is equally important. And relationship and partnership are the way to go for the Indian market. So
no, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Please.
No, Hemant bhai, in the interest of the audience, he has over $1 billion in revenue. So I'm sure he has responded better and managed relationships better to scale up despite large corporates on the other side of the table. Very good. Yes. Prashant ji?
I think we all are large. We will all become large one day. I think depends how well God is kind and how well we are able to run through our processes and run through a team. But for the interest of scaling up, I think we need to define a proper process and a proper combination of both. And in India, I think if I may say, relationship is very, very important.
And Prashant ji, can I ask one question, strategic question to Aditya ji? Aditya ji, again, if you can wear your strategy consulting hat. Now, on one hand, large corporates, by virtue of their size, they have developed processes over the years. But given that we are in the disruptive world where the half-life period of products and services are shrinking, the products are getting obsolete relatively quickly. So economies of scale has been an advantage or used to be an advantage. Do you really think that economies of scale can continue to be an advantage, or it can become a liability going forward in this disruptive world?
Yeah, first, sure, you picked up a good point, is that how do you deal with velocity and the rate of change that is increasing? Change has always been there, but what is different now is the rate of change. So I'll give examples. This is basically a mindset question here. I see in the Bay Area, you look at some of the largest companies, like you see Apple, you see Microsoft. You see Apple was run by Steve Jobs, an entrepreneur in and out. And then Tim Cook takes it over and the valuation goes 3, 4, 5 times since the time Steve Jobs went away. Microsoft, if you see Bill Gates, an entrepreneur, now Satya Nadella takes over. The stock grows 5 times from the time Nadella has taken over. The thorough, all the time professional. So that's one evidence of how, whether it's your entrepreneur or you're a professional, what matters is eventually how do you take decisions, how do you seize an opportunity and go for it. Yeah. And I can see in the Bay Area more and more what is happening is large companies like Cisco is a classic example, Visa, all of these guys, they're making some of these called as acqui-hire. They'll go and hire small companies, 200 people companies, 500 people companies, 1,000 people, and they're not just interested in the technology and what they have to offer, but they have collected a group. They want to bring these people into the organization. They keep them separate. They don't want to merge them into or integrate them into a larger organization, so that they can scale up that company, right? So I think eventually economies of scale, sometimes they hurt, sometimes they help. I think it's a cycle. Yeah. Sometimes companies go into it saying, hey, you know what, stick to the core. So let's divest some of these non-core businesses. Sometimes they say, hey, you know what, scale matters. So let's go and aggressively grow in every part of the world and everywhere in the world. Yeah. I don't think there is a one straight answer there. But how you manage the business, how you manage the people, how you seize opportunities, and and frankly execute. The strategy without
Ajay,
execution is just a good idea.
Okay, sure.
Ajay, if it's okay, can I chime in?
Please, sure.
Sure.
Ranjan,
So just adding to what Aditya was saying, that one of the things that we have started seeing, as a cultural shift is in the past, from a process standpoint, it used to be very waterfall. You follow one step and then go to the next one, and it used to take a lot of time because any of these steps that get slows down the entire delivery process. And the mind shift is changing to more of agile processing, where you're not waiting for the previous step. Things are all happening in its own process level. Uh, and one of the concepts that is becoming much more prevalent, and I was in Bay Area, so I've seen that a lot, where we call it as an MVP, minimal viable product, where the perfect state is not there. It's just the basic version of the thought process, so we can get it out the door quickly while we continue to evolve with the perfection or getting it ready for a broader market set. But one in the past, where we need to get everything into the product completely packaged before we go out, versus let's get the basic things out and then we'll continue to evolve as the customers are interacting with the product. So that shift from a process standpoint, where it used to be waterfall and now it's more agile, more flexible to interact with the customer, to seize that opportunity with the customer or with the market. I think that's where companies are evolving now.
sure. Thank you, Ranjan.
Can I come in here, Ajayji?
Yeah, please, Rajesh. Yes.
So
And then
I would
Prashant,
like
yeah.
Yeah, I would like to give my perspective from retail industry perspective. So in retail, scalability is not an option. Actually, see what happens, the more number of outlets we have, each and every outlet contributes some small amount to the corpus. And because of that, the entire retail industry works. And that's how they have to expand. Otherwise, there is no option. Because the overheads and everything will keep on increasing every year. And to meet them, you have to scale up. You have to start growing. However, there is one element that I would like to say, which has changed the perspective of entire retail industry in the recent times, which is COVID. Earlier, most retailers, and I'm talking about the retail chains, they would keep on expanding without worrying about the bottom line. But with the COVID, the new thought that has come into the retail industry is growth, but profitable growth. It can't be just expanding anywhere like a jungle and without worrying about the bottom line. So this is the little bit I wanted to add from the retail industry perspective, that growth is very important, but we have learned our lesson that profitable growth is extremely important.
Sure. Prashantji?
Yeah, thank you. So,
Thank you.
there is one topic which might sound, I don't know, controversial, or the way that people evaluate today. How is the corporate governance structure when you manage a entrepreneur versus a corporate? So I want to start with the corporate here. Please share with us, how do you see the corporate governance, and how do you see that when you compete with the entrepreneurs? And I want to understand the same perspective coming from the entrepreneurs later. So maybe I start here with Rajesh ji, you first. How do you see
So,
the governance versus yeah?
so corporate governance, no doubt, is extremely important. You can't live without having good corporate practices. You have to have social compliance, legal compliance, values, ethics, all those things built into the system. And that helps a lot in your business. So once you have that corporate governance, that everything, in my belief, flows from the top. So if you are very, very serious about corporate governance at the top, even the people in the entire chain below you, they would start believing in corporate governance. And with this, you can actually make a very good goodwill point for your entire company, for your entire organization, not only for your employees, but also for the government and also for the customers. So in my view, corporate governance is extremely important.
And how do you deal with this, Hemant Bhai, when you say corporate governance perception from the corporates that, okay, if I'm competing with a local company, they may not follow the best standards. So this perception, how do you manage and how do you see corporate governance, the value system?
Shanji, this is a constant struggle. I think smaller companies can get away without the corporate governance. But as you scale up, I think there are certain benefits of scaling up, there's certain disbenefits of scaling up. So the corporate governance is a non-negotiable. You have to have your compliances in place. You have to have legals and your social responsibility, like what our dear friend told before us, that we need to. It is non-negotiable. It is something which you can't do without once you scale up. And I think as all responsible companies, whether it is a professional or whether it's entrepreneur driven, I think all of us have to follow in today's time corporate governance, and especially with new norms being placed by the government now. I think we all are doing it, and I think we should be doing it also.
And Sureshji can add his perspective also, because he has transitioned his family-owned business into a diversified, professionally run business. So your take on it, Sureshji?
No, I completely resonate to the earlier speakers. I think corporate governance is non-negotiable. I think if you aspire to grow, there is no other replacement. I mean, you have to put the corporate governance in place, your compliances, your tax efficiency. Everything is absolutely important. Otherwise, the growth never happens. And we have seen it in our family business when we were a proprietor company to a partnership company. Then how we brought the entire organization in an umbrella, like a holding company concept, where we are into 5 verticals, and each of these 5 verticals became then the subsidiaries of that holding company, where we defined the shareholding of the entire family in there. And I clearly was able to see the benefits of doing that. And obviously, it was a lot of extra workload for all of us, because earlier we were just managing with this partnership, but our growth for many, many years was limited to a particular threshold. The minute we corporatized the structure, it not only multiplied in terms of the turnover, the top line, but also it sort of brought about a greater clarity of what are the other inherent strengths that as a company that we have, in which we can grow. So I think corporate governance is the starting point of your growth. That is not negotiable.
And now we know how, Sureshji, how and where this comes from, your conviction in professionalizing Jito and retaining KPMG to transform into a professional organization. Now we know the genesis of that thought. Thank you.
I would like to
Prashant?
follow this question with Hiteshji as well. Tell us, Hiteshji, again, from the perception of corporate governance, working in an environment in India where generally there are challenges in this area. How do you really deal with this challenge? And especially when you transform from a small growing business to a large corporate, this is a huge change management. So how do you really implement it?
Like everyone said, after a certain scale, it is not an option. And it is like a discipline. You have taken certain decisions, you have managed your meetings, and now it is a different way of working. So in this journey, for any entrepreneur, it is a little bit difficult. But I think it is not an option. So it has to be after a certain scale. And what happens when you see it from the different angle in a corporate governance, you get a lot of learning and you see the different angles. Because when it is not a corporate governance, you take the decisions and you close it, and nobody knows that. Now the decisions and these things coming on the floor, on the board, and your members gives you this different angle, different way of thinking to that. And I think that is very good, in my opinion. even if it is not a compulsion, smaller scale, if we want to grow, we should start practice, and probably we were late into that.
I think that's very well said, Hiteshji. I think that's a valuable insight. If I combine now our three insights, one was coming in from the intuition, gut, or to take that first step of vision to bring an organization to a scale. As we are scaling up, the dilemma between processes versus scaling up quickly, and how do you manage the gut at the same time get into a process for growth. And when you are reaching a certain level of growth, you really need to come to a corporate governance or a process. So I think it's a very good application that a lot of startups today can take from what we learned in the last few minutes from all your experiences, is that this is a classic case where between being entrepreneurial or building a corporate, there eventually a person has to rely on processes and corporate governance for growth. So I think that will be a valuable lessons for startups to say, hey, look, if I really want to scale up, maybe this is something I can learn from this panel. Thanks a lot for this deep insight. Now, when you say gut feeling, again, yeah, I'm coming back to the topic because gut brings person into the business and an entrepreneur closer to the business. So how do you disengage from the business? I see now when I look at Suresh Bhai or Hemant Bhai, I'm feeling that, okay, now I have these systems in place, I can really take a step back. But is that 24/7 pressure there with you? And here I'm leaving it open to the panel. How do you disengage from a large corporate to say, okay, now I think my team will take care of it. I don't have to really worry about it. Are you able to disengage? Where do you see your journey? Please share something about that. Maybe Hiteshji, will go to you first.
I think that, see, you particularly, I will talk here in Jito platform, the Gujaratis and Marwadis born with the guts. And so if you tell me that when it will go, I think it will go in the last ride. So I will not say that even if you have a professionals or even you have the CEOs or MDs in a place, and that gut, you will stop somewhere. So that business is in a blood, and the business is the gut. So when we born, most of the families, you get that in your continuous, I will say, the development from childhood, that you have to do the business. And business, when you are there, you see that how your families are taking the risk, even if it is a small or big business. So in my opinion, in all of us, that will continue, even if we have professional organizations in place and we go to the level where the families or ownership is different than the management, and which most of we aspire to do it end of the day. But after that also, if it comes to the Jito or they are on some social organization, and when they are taking the decision, I see that with the guts only. So that, in my opinion, it doesn't go off.
Yes, Vishalji.
Yeah. Sureshji, you want to jump in here?
Sure.
Right. I mean, I completely agree with Hitesh Bhai. I think it's a matter of personal choice. I think how much is enough is somebody will have to define from their personal choices. But I think we as Jain community are, we don't have that inherent lifestyle of club culture, or maybe play a golf culture. We, end of the day, are always thinking in our mind, as far as our family is secured, our social responsibilities are taken care, and the religious whatever activities that we are doing, we are always wanting to grow. So that 24/7 concept is always going to be there. I mean, you can. I mean, if you were to give examples of Adanis or the Ambanis, or I mean, if you have achieved a certain milestone, you work on the next milestone, and then when you achieve that, you still. So the quest for growth is always there, and as long as that is there, I don't think you can ever relax. It is always going to be 24/7.
So maybe this sets a follow-up question with corporate side. Now let me understand from you, Aditya ji, or from Ranjan ji. In corporate, the gut is not usually rewarded. If you do something which is from gut but not been backed by data or by a process, you might usually end up being on the wrong side of compliance or corporate governance. So how do you see in the corporate scenario you deal with this dilemma that I know from the gut this is right, but the data or the process is not supporting? Please share with us a dilemma if you can.
I would say, I mean, I think it. Go ahead, Aditya.
No, please go ahead, Ranjan.
Okay. I think we were talking about the governance a few minutes back, Prashantji. So I think that's where it comes into play, where hey, my gut is saying this, I don't have a data, or data is going completely against what I am thinking. That's where governance come into the play, or the processes we are putting into play to make sure that it's not just a one person decision. It's like a teamwork there, right? So and then if everyone is like, is supporting that gut, then it's like, okay, then that's a team decision. Then it's no longer my decision. Then that becomes a decision. And again, there are a lot of factors that goes into making a decision. So I don't think it's
but
just
I
a gut.
pause. Yeah, I think I take a pause because what you're saying is okay, fine. I have my gut, but if 5 people in the process don't support it, possibly that will not happen. I think you're politely saying that. So I think that's really
It,
showing up that okay, this is the real dilemma that can slow down a large corporate when there is a gut. Aditya ji, your comments on this.
Yeah, so I think I don't think it's an either or, Prashant. It's when you're an executive and you're making a decision, you're relying on a certain set of things that you want to do, right? And you have to take the people along with you. In the case of let's say an owner-driven company, the owner can say, "This is what hey, my decision, my neck." Yeah, and I'm going forward with it and saying, "You're fine, good, man. You're yeah, go hang yourself with a rope. That's totally fine, right?" But in a corporate world, that's where the checks and balances come. And I think executives, that's when the influencing skills become very important. How do you take your board? How do you take your shareholders? How do you take your employees, all different these stakeholders, through a journey and explain to them the story? I see this all the time when what is vision? It's not a vision, it's not a statement. Yeah, it's actually how do you take people to follow and buy into that vision?
That's why I remember now, Aditya ji, when we asked you initially, how do you recruit? The first thing you said was, okay, his influencing skills. So maybe in corporate, if you really want to follow your gut, you need 5 people with you to say yes. Otherwise, it will not fly. So that is also reflecting in your recruitment strategy. Very interesting and funny part.
and Prashant, even for 5 people to say yes, to Aditya's point, it's the influential skill that is going to play, like, making sure that you have your allies when the data, you don't have the data to back up. Now, if you have the data, you have the vision, and you have people, then it becomes a much easier conversation to support that decision.
And Vishalji had very interesting. Yeah, Rajeshji, please go ahead. Then
So
Vishalji
I
had some interesting question after that. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I would like to say that end of the day, gut is a gut. I mean, it's just the feeling that we are having that it should do well, and if it is not supported by data, then it is likely to get into that risk, that word that we were using earlier, getting into that risk without knowing what is going to happen. But at the same time, on the other hand, if you look at data, and if you, let's say, accounting data, that's considered pure data, there is a saying that says that accounting statements are like the tip of an iceberg. What they reveal is interesting, but what they conceal is significant. So if we look at only data and not marry it rightly with gut, it is not likely to result into any big achievement, is my firm belief. So it's a fine balance between gut and data, and I continue to maintain that. I use that every day in my business, day in and day out, and I think that really delivers results.
Sure. Thank
So
you.
it's interesting now where it is now so far we're talking about us. So when we have now created a large organization and we have also created certain processes to manage that organization. Now, if your employees are hiding behind the process and taking it easy for themselves. So there are two questions I'm leaving to this panel. One, how do you then manage that? How do you really make sure that your employees are not becoming complacent and hiding behind the process? That is the question part number one. Second, how do you really drive and motivate the organization to, when I'm hearing large complex processes in the organization can really slow down? So these are the two questions I would really like to get perspectives both from all of you. So anyone to go?
So I have a live example, Prashantji, to share about this. So this example is about one joint venture project that we were doing in the Maldives,
Mhm.
and where I was handling it directly as an entrepreneur, right? So the first phase got over, the second phase came in, and when the second phase came in, there were a lot of other growths happening, and so we had a operations head to handle that. Now, just as a simple thing, to get a particular joint venture agreement with a a bank agreement, there's another escrow agreement to be signed. That man took about 7 days. So I asked him, why 7 days? He said, no, I handed over to him. They're supposed to revert back. So I said, this is just a matter of phone call. You could have just called that person and got it done. I mean, it would have happened in 1 day. That's the difference. So I think somewhere you will still have to be involved as an entrepreneur, getting things done, because there's a value to time. I think if professionals and corporates can understand the factor of the value of time, and somewhere when it comes to critical, strategic, and business development matters, we'll have to have a bridge. So that's my submission.
Hiteshji, you're muted.
That's a challenge, in my opinion. Every entrepreneur has to go through it, because you are creating islands and you have to connect them as an entrepreneur constantly. Like Sureshji said, that you have the agreement, you send it to the finance. Finance is putting his comments and probably is sending it to the another, maybe the legal, and legal maybe to the operation. And so what happens? You get a little bit frustrated. You have been through a quick decision on the spot. You are the lawyer, you are the finance controller. As an owner, like you said, it's and now you have the lot of stations, and you don't have that patience. So probably we, like a discipline, has to bring that bias, and we have to connect them each other continuously. And that journey we have to go through that when we are scaling up.
Sure. Yes. Vishalji?
Prashant, I'd like to add a point. Just listening to this conversation, every time I was processing this myself, talking about process, like, okay, what does process really mean? I think that's where we should have started with. I mean, process is not equal to bureaucracy. I can tell you organizations, at least in the United States, are becoming so flat that decisioning becomes super, like, we talk about empowerment, we talk about hiring the right kind of people who can make decisions and who can make things happen. We talk about this all the time, and organizations today, the more the velocity of change increases, the organizations are becoming less and less delayered, right? So that's another one that we've talked about. How do you delayer an organization? So the distance between the CEO and the bottom rung, the number of layers have reduced. So all these things are just happening right now. And I'm also getting a sense that is not just, sorry?
But I think here, this is where you're copying from the entrepreneurs, as Hitesh Bhai and Suresh Bhai just mentioned. I have to gently give a nudge. So you're now saying, okay, corporate is learning from the entrepreneur this bit and reducing the layers so that they can actually give that nudge when it is needed.
Yeah, I don't know if it is coming from it, but it's just happening as a part of natural process, natural evolution, if you will, and of change as well. And I'm seeing the gut and instinct are two different things. The instinct, the entrepreneur's instinct, how do you sniff an opportunity and go after it, and then and jump before, take the leap, and then say, okay, in real time I'll manage certain things. That's a skill itself, right? And at least in the corporate world, you may or may not have that ability to do that. I'll jump and then I'll figure out what I want to do, right? And I'll manage it in there. Yeah. So that is an important one. And I don't think corporates are going to, or corporate executives are just going to be allowed to do, and I'm talking about $1 million, $2, $3, $5 million decisions. I'm talking about, if you're talking about, hey, I want to go and acquire a $5 billion entity now. I'll acquire it and then I'll figure it out what I want to do with it. That's not going to happen. Yeah. Because it's just the governance, the processes and the shareholders that kick in.
Yeah, Hemant Bhai, yes. Hemant Bhai?
Yeah, I like the way Aditya ji described the entrepreneur, that we stick our neck. It's our neck, we can hang it. So as an entrepreneur, I think that's the case. We are sticking our neck. whenever we're taking a call, because it's your neck at you're still putting your neck inside. But what I feel typically is that in a corporate structure, I think it's more of a collective decision. It goes more like a collective decision to really. So the longevity in the business, what I personally feel, the longevity of the business in corporate structure increases more than it is there in the entrepreneur. So I would so hello.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's all.
Sure. No, Hemant bhai, I think what you are saying is that longevity increases with the processes so that it can be, there could be some checks and balances on it.
No, it's like today. Suppose if you are working in Walt Disney, you would not take a call of going into a chemical business or a plastic business. You would be going in that set business model. Even if you are a CEO of a company, you just can't jump into and put a few $1 million in a business totally unrelated. But an entrepreneur who is his own boss can take that risk and stick his neck all the time. So which can result into the longevity of the business. Walt Disney is here for the last many years and hopefully will remain here for decades to come. But which is not the case with some of the entrepreneur companies, I would say.
Sure. Yeah, and before we open the floors to the audience, Prashantji, Vishalji had a very interesting question. A little twist. Is it okay, Prashantji? That we can. Yeah, Vishalji.
So maybe I can get personal and maybe ask maybe a bit controversial. So today is 24th July. Interestingly, that is 24/7. And what I gathered, what Hiteshji and Sureshji, Hemantji mentioned, maybe as an entrepreneur, you are always 24/7. Maybe professionals, I will leave it to the panels to comment on. And as a result of that, the quality of life, which is a function of time in hand with family, for social, of course, Jito, and of course, on your spiritual religious side, it does get compromised or not. I would love to hear your thoughts, and no side is good, I'm sure.
Vishal, controversial topic. I mean, look, I'll start.
That's the purpose of Crossfire. I was
assumption
He
that you
saved
are
best for the
making
last.
that entrepreneur is on 24/7 and the professional is not on 24/7. I think I would start the opposite. I can tell you my family has a lot of business people. They're never on. Yeah.
I think
But anyway.
This is a general feeling that professionals are playing golf and entrepreneurs are
Maybe Hemant, playing golf and making the deal at the same time.
Yeah.
Mixing business
that's
with
right.
pleasure, right? No, Vishal, coming to your point, I think it's personally like while the work never stops, right? Companies never stop, the business never stops. I think it comes down to the personal discipline, right? Like when I take time off and I go for vacation, I do make sure that I'm not working while I'm on a vacation. But at the same time, given the role we all play, there is dependency. So just making sure that if anything that is urgent, either it has been taken care of, or there is somebody who is taking care of it, or at least you are reachable in case an emergency arises. But not everything can be considered as an emergency. So because then that's where you get stuck into, okay, you're getting called for everything, right? So then you need to have that balance and discipline around. It has to be critical, urgent enough that if I don't respond, the business is stuck or business is going to see the impact. But beyond that, hey, I just want to know something about it. Yeah, it can wait, right? So I think it comes down to the discipline at the end of the day.
So Vishal, I'm hearing two corporates, okay, they are on 24/7. I can add myself into that. It's always 24/7. And maybe very quickly we go to Rajesh ji, and then we would like to really hear grass on the other side on entrepreneurs gets to be green. So before we get there, Rajesh ji, to you.
See, I think again, it boils down to the same thing that the professionals normally work on systems and processes, and that actually helps a lot. So if I look at my career, initially it was extremely difficult, but when I got comfortable with all the systems and processes in the company, in the organization, then I realized that okay, I can take it a little easy, and I don't necessarily have to work on the weekends and when I'm on vacations. However, as Ranjan rightly said, it doesn't mean that you're not available. One is available 24/7. in case of an emergency, and emergencies can come anytime. I mean, we know that businesses are not so predictable. So given this thought,
It's a vacation, so I'm really hoping that you are enjoying that. And I would
yes.
like to move to maybe Hemant Bhai, Hitesh Bhai, and Suresh Bhai to understand how do they disengage on vacations or holidays.
So in fact, actually, yes, this is the first time in my in the last 5 to 6 days that I have opened my laptop, but it doesn't mean that my mobile is not working. So if there is anything that is urgent, my I am definitely available 24/7. But at the same time, yes, we are able to switch off our laptop in case there is no emergency arising at that time.
So Prashant, if we need a good holiday, if me and my family needs a good holiday, I need to work for half an hour that day. If I don't work the half an hour of the day, I feel jittery. So my wife tells me that please go ahead and get your half an hour of phone calls. So then you can switch off your phone calls.
Okay.
So I think as an entrepreneur, I think it's an art which I need to learn. Maybe I'll learn it over a period of time. But that's something which is so ingrained. So we do take that half an hour even on holidays to ensure that everything is going smoothly. It's nothing to do with business, but I think it's a personal habit.
Thank you.
Yeah, so should we open the floor for the audience, Prashantji, Vishalji?
Yeah. I think there is one last question which has also come on the chat is which I wanted to share is what time do you think for an entrepreneur, and this is for you as entrepreneurs here, that you say, hey, look, at this size, maybe it should be a corporate and should run by itself by professionals. At what time do you think would be the right time? This is so maybe I start with you, Sureshji, and then over to Hemant Bhai and Hiteshji.
Yeah, so good question, Prashantji. And I think we've been struggling with a particular number of our top line, not really corporatizing or bringing in professionals for doing business development. And I think we are stuck at that number for far too many years. I think I've realized that this is one of the reasons why we were not able to cross that number. And we've now brought in those numbers and, I mean, the required team and people at place, the professionals. And I think we have already seen the results over the last quarter or so. I think for me, I would say anything above 500 crores of top line, it's definitely you can't just manage it within your family or just having a team. You definitely need to bring systems in place and professionals.
Best person for the.
Thank you, Sureshji. That's 500 crores. Hemant Bhai. And second, the people who are raising hands, I would request please post your questions on the chat box. It'll be faster for us to pick your question from the chat box. Thank you. Hemant Bhai, to you.
Prashantji, I don't think so. There's a number I have in mind after which you need to really professionalize. I think it depends on the business and the kind of business you are in. Some things you can professionalize, some things you can't. Diamond businesses you can't professionalize. I've seen large diamond companies which are not able to professionalize. They are family run because of the nature of the business. So typically, I feel that as soon as we can, and as soon as we feel that yes, we are getting into multiple roles, we should professionalize the business to scale up. Because I think that's the only way to scale up and have a good life. Otherwise, we would not be able to do justice to work-life balance in any way. So I think for me, it depends. It's not a value that you 500 crores or 300 crores or 1,000 crores. As soon as possible, as soon as you start a business, if you can do that, I think that's for me. It's a better way of running a company and a better way of living life.
All right, Hiteshji, I heard you from you before that. Okay, it's in my genes. Gujarati and Marwadi, I will probably not disengage, but again, to you, what do you think is the right time for an organization to professionalize?
Theoretically, right time, I will absolutely agree with the Hemant Bhai, as soon as we can. But exactly when it happens, in my opinion, when you start thinking that now you cannot do it alone and what you want to be, and there you think that you need a team. That's number one. And number two is at certain age, now you think that now you have to little bit do something else than business. I would like to give the answer for that 24/7 also. In entrepreneurship and professionalship, I think that two things different. In a professionals, I see much more planning, which entrepreneurs have a little bit less. And 24/7 is not the work, the thinking, in my opinion. Entrepreneurs, even if you wake them up at 2 o'clock, they must be thinking some of business. So it's not 24/7 working, in my opinion, it is a thinking behind it.
Thank you.
Vishal, I might add this to agree with Bill Gates recently said, yeah, busy is the new stupid.
Yeah.
So I can see people working 24/7 and like produce nothing. But anyway, so it's food for thought. It's how you manage your life.
Sure.
Bill Gates perhaps can afford to say that.
Yeah, and Bill Gates has given 80% of
I
his
think that
wealth
is what
from
our
donation.
panel said. After a size and scale, yes, you could. And maybe Bill Gates has got that size and scale. Maybe that's interesting. Very interesting.
Aditya ji, a lot of time people say money doesn't matter. Only people who have money say that. People who don't have don't say that.
Reminds me of a professor on compliance in ESMT in Germany. And when he started his first session of compliance, he said, okay, look, it is only when the organization reaches a size and scale that they really work on their corporate governance and compliances, because that is where they have a lot to lose. So it's interesting. It's an interesting perspective. There is a question that has come on the chat on many big groups do go bankrupt, and there are corporates also that go bankrupt. So how do you differentiate that between entrepreneurs versus corporate? Anything that you have as thoughts to share around that?
Or we'll go to the next question.
Yep. How do you handle failure and digest success? That's the second question from Kavya Jain, Mumbai.
Yeah, Rajesh. Yes.
I think failures is an essential part of anything that you do, whether in personal life or in professional life. The best way to handle any failure is resilience. You have to bounce back. You have to emerge stronger. You learn from those failures and start working towards a better future. So that's I think the simple answer that I have, that resilience is the most important thing, and failure is a part and parcel of life.
I think it was an interesting discussion on fast to fail. Any comments on that? Today, corporate culture is encouraging fast to fail, learn fast, fail fast.
Yeah.
I think it's sorry.
I can go ahead. I don't know who's, but I think Prashant, that's the culture that is happening in organizations today. I think there is a good way to fail and there's a bad way to fail. Though failure is always painful. Yeah, I mean, if you've taken a methodical, logical, thoughtful way of project, and then you fail, then you learn from it. Yeah, and I'll tell you, NASA, the national the space authority here, 60% of their projects fail. That's a known part. Elon Musk, most of the rockets fail, then it becomes a successful. So failure is part of the journey to the success, right? That's how, if you take it in a much more structured way. But if you keep failing, doing the same thing again and again and not learn from it, then that's not good.
Yeah. Prashant, can I ask one quick question?
Yes, Ajay.
Each one. So if on the other side, so for the entrepreneurs, the question is, what would be one piece of advice / suggestion you have for the corporates and vice versa? As a parting shot, what's one piece of suggestion / advice that you have for the other side? Yeah, Hemant bhai.
Let me listen to the corporates first.
So I think for me would be that they educate the important aspects of being a professional. The learning becomes mutual, and we sort of impart some entrepreneurial knowledge to them, and we work as partners.
What I would say is, I mean, personally, corporate or entrepreneurship, my advice to anyone is stay hungry. Just continue to learn, continue to evolve, right? Like we learn so much from entrepreneurship, it eventually grows into corporateship. Then, if you're learning every time we are doing something, next step is to get better, right? So just stay hungry, continue to evolve.
Yes. Hitesh bhai, what's your one piece of advice to the corporate world?
I don't have the advice, but I will ask that they keep teaching us, the scaling up and making this global, thinking of global.
Okay, Sure. And what would you want to say, Aditya ji and Rajesh ji, to the entrepreneurs?
So Aditya, you would like to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, I can go first. So
Yeah.
I spent 20 years in the US, and then I went back to India for 2 years, and I had a marvelous time. And before I came to the US, I actually ran my own business and sold it in India. So what I've seen is basically the shift in entrepreneurship in India. And I'm part of the Jain Angel Network. Met some of the members are here. I've invested in 2. And when I was investing in those Indian entrepreneurs, small companies, I had one skeptical thought. How is governance going to work? Where there is books for everyone. There's one book for set of books for income tax. There's one book of set of for your own family, and there's one book of set for your auditors. What has changed is what I've learned in the last 2-3 years since I've invested in the startups, is that Indian entrepreneurship has become a lot more professional. Yeah, it has become a lot more structured. It's a pleasure to see those entrepreneurs actually think and talk using some of the insights, just very, and the kind of education they've gone through. So the new Indian entrepreneurs are actually rock stars in my view, and then they're just very structured. So I don't think there's a lot of difference there.
Thank you.
Other than the instinct piece of it.
Sure. Okay. Rajesh ji, what would be your advice to the entrepreneurs?
So I would say that the lines are definitely blurring these days. Entrepreneurs are operating and organizing their businesses pretty much like professionals. They engage professionals to run their businesses. And on the other hand, professionals have started taking ownership of the businesses that they run. So the lines are blurring very fast. There can't be a one set of advice to either one of them, I guess. There will be a lot of things that one can exchange. However, having said that, I would like to give 2 pieces of advice to budding entrepreneurs. It might be a little controversial. One is that we have already talked about systems and processes. So entrepreneurs, maybe they can put more attention to systems and processes. And the second one, which I see could have a potential impact of a conflict, is that entrepreneurs normally, and I'm talking about budding entrepreneurs, those who want to become entrepreneurs, that they normally think of creating wealth for shareholders. They don't consider that employees are also stakeholders. So they should start considering employees as stakeholders and start thinking in creating wealth for everybody, including the shareholders. That's mainly for budding entrepreneurs. I think this will go a long way in scaling up the businesses and making their professionals as partners in their businesses.
Sure. That's an excellent piece of advice, Rajesh ji. Prashant ji, Vishal ji, are we ready to conclude? Then over to Milind bhai, and then is that okay? Prashant ji, Vishal ji?
Yes, maybe I just had a comment, I think, to Suresh ji, is that
Yes.
entrepreneurs, professionals can come together. So certainly this was our wisdom exchange, and we have in the mentorship program in the JPF, we have 36 accomplished Jain professional mentors. So certainly that forum is open to everyone in Jito Jain people, and I think I'll just ask all of you to spread the word. So they should get benefited from the wisdom on an ongoing basis, on a one-to-one basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal ji. Milind bhai, over to you, and then Tapaswi.
Yeah. Thank you, Ajay bhai. A wonderful session and wonderful deep insight from each of participant here. And one observation I had about Hemant bhai, Hitesh bhai, and Suresh bhai, that you spoke about sticking out your neck, right? But then you have been sticking out your neck pretty frequently, pretty successfully. So there must have been some methodology or some process behind that. So finally we boiled down to some process somewhere, right? And now today the JPF has come to a stage, right? This is all because of a deep thinking of our leaders. So we have a Satish Parak, under whose able leadership, he's an Shantilaji Parak, Shantilaji Kawar, under whose able leadership this JPF started taking shape. And today here we are. And the kind of talent that we have on board is a really great thing. And we have a Satyji Parak here right now. So would you be able to add something, Satyji?
Satyji, welcome. Satyji, you will have to unmute yourself. Yeah. Satyji, if you can please unmute yourself.
You can see everything.
You can unmute yourself.
Huh?
Satyji, can you unmute yourself?
Hello,
Yeah, please
yeah.
go ahead. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
please go ahead.
actually, I'm traveling, so you will not be able to hear me.
Yes.
But I could join only in the Q&A session. It
Okay.
was pretty interesting. Overall, it's going on very well. I
Sure.
could hear Hemant Bhai, Suresh Bhai, and Vari. I appreciate the concerns of corporates also. But both have to work in hand, is what I feel. If we can bring ownership in corporate level, or if we can make them co-owners, then definitely it works for both entrepreneurs and corporates.
Sure.
That is the feel I have.
Sure. Thank you, Satyji.
So
As you know,
as it was said, it is not true only for budding entrepreneurs, but it's true for everybody. All stakeholders have to be taken care.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Satyji, as you know, is the MD of publicly traded organization Ashoka Infrastructure. Milind bhai.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I hand over to Mr. Tapasvi for vote of thanks. Yes.
Thank you, Milinji. What an amazing session this was. I take this opportunity to thank Rajesh ji, Ranjan ji, Aditya ji, Suresh ji, Hitesh ji, and Hemant ji for sharing your thoughts on various topics like recruitment strategies, systems or processes versus guts, and how important it is to balance between both, especially for larger decisions, and most importantly, always take calculated risks. We heard your personal experience on scaling up, role of corporate governance, and what Hemant ji and Suresh ji said. Corporate governance is just a non-negotiable, and its importance right till the bottom down. Aditya ji and Ranjan ji emphasized on the importance of having influential skills. Personally, adding to what Rajesh ji and Hitesh ji said, I think, which is common for all, be it entrepreneurs or corporate giants, scalability is just not an option, and we all set barriers higher and higher. And finally, we are all available 24/7. Lastly, what Ajay ji says, there is no right or wrong. It's all about the process that drives it. Rajesh ji, Ranjan ji, Aditya ji, we look forward to seeing you on more such sessions. Special thanks to our moderators, Prashant ji, Vishal ji, and Ajay ji. Thank you everyone in joining us. We shall be back with more such sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.